Hello everyone, welcome to the CZ Armor channel. What the task today is to disassemble a CZ Tactical Sports Orange. This is a friend asked me to check for a few malfunctions, do kind of a factory cleanup on it, make sure it's kind of a clean as it comes out of the box. So I'm gonna need to almost do a complete disassemble. It's not going to be a complete disassemble because I'm not gonna remove the bushing, neither the front side. This is going to stay, and I won't remove, most likely I won't remove the frame, the slide stop spring that is retained by this pin here. This is going to stay. That's probably most of what people leave behind when we're talking about a complete disassemble, but I want to be honest with you, this is not going to be 100% disassemble. That will be missing this pieces, bushing front side and the slide stop spring. I don't have a reason to take this out. So like I said, this is a CZ Tactical Sports Orange, heavily modified. It has a cut, well, not heavily modified, it's modified, fairly modified, because it has the slide has been cut so he can use a optics on it. This gun is used by this person on tactical games, so they also one of the differences between the Tactical Sports series and the Shadow 2 or the Shadow series is that the Tactical Sports don't have this tactical rail here, Picatinny rail or whatever system it would have here. So he adapted. He had two holes in the frame, thread those holes and put some Allen bolts here to fix a Picatinny rail here, so he can put a flashlight, shoot at night. That's what I actually saw him. He published a video of him shooting at night with this gun and having a series of malfunctions. So he wants me to take a look at it. So without further ado, let's get to it. Let's get to disassemble this beauty. When it comes to tools, what you're going to need is a small gunsmith hammer, a 1/16 punch. That's for both the extractor and the trigger pin. You're going to need the Torx T20 size. This on the OEM configuration of the Tactical Sports Orange would be used to, you can use to remove both the thumb rest and the grip panels. This gentleman uses aftermarket grip panels, and I think they came with a T10 Torx screw as opposed to the T20, so I'm going to use the T10 as well. The T10 is also used to remove the button of the mag release. You're going to need a flat screwdriver. Always good to have a tweezer around, a plastic punch, and for this specific one, since it has a dot mount on it, I already checked, I'm going to need a 2mm Allen wrench to remove the dot bolts. Unfortunately, he's going to need to zero his gun again after I worked on it. And the reason is because I don't have any way to access. Actually, there is a little tiny space there that I can use to remove the extractor. I don't know if you can see on the camera. It's just too close to the dot, and I don't want to risk, scratching the dot or hammering the dot by an accident. So I'm going to remove this dot, take it out of the picture before I start working on the extractor. So this is it. Let's go. Let's get to it now. So first thing we're going to do, of course, is separate the slide from the frame. So to do that, I'm going to make sure the gun is empty. There's nothing on the chamber, nothing on the magwell. This is completely safe operation here. I'm going to rack the slide a little bit, bring it back, activate the safety, and let the slide rest again. So you see it ends up, the safety prevents the slide to go full into battery, leaves that gap, and this is exactly where the slide and the frame need to align. See those marks? So you can remove the slide stop. So I'm going to get my plastic punch and just push the slide stop out. It should come out. There we go. Slide stop comes out. Put it aside. Now I lower the safety and the slide comes out. I'm going to finish the slide first, then I'll work on the frame. So I'm going to take this guide rod, spring, a plastic buffer. A lot of people ask about this plastic buffer. Is this something that causes malfunctions? Or unless, I don't have a reason to believe that this would cause a malfunction. It does change how much the gun opens, how much the slide, when the slide cycles, how much it opens to, basically how much time that ejection port is open for the ejection. However, it has an important function. This provides some buffer and doesn't let the slide hit the frame directly. So it hits this plastic buffer before the frame and absorb some of the impact. So this is good for the gun, longevity of the gun itself, but also helps with the minimizing impact to your dot. So there is actually an advantage of using it. I wouldn't remove unless you have good evidence that it is part of what's causing problems. So right now, I don't see why I would do that. So I'll keep it, but here it is. Recoil spring, plastic buffer, and guiding rod. This goes away. We'll take the barrel off. Oh, this is one of the models that has a bushing, has a little sleeve here, not a bushing, sorry. We push that sleeving out. There's a plastic sleeve. Not every tactical sports has this plastic sleeve. I think this is more of the older models, but let's see the trigger guard here. I'm not sure this is one of the older models, to be honest. So anyways, get the barrel out. And the last thing I'm gonna do here is then, well, I'm take the dot out so I can get the firing pin and the extractor out. So the dot's gonna come out with that 2mm Allen wrench. Hopefully there isn't a ton of Loctite or anything like this here, and it will come out easy for me. Oh yeah, it's coming out pretty easy, no problem. Here's one thing I'm gonna do to make sure nothing happens to his dot. I'm going to protect it a little bit, cover with some masking tape here, just to make sure I don't touch it with my greasy fingers and stuff like that. So one bolt is out. Oh yeah, this is easy. Actually, this was even too loose, so I'm gonna give him a heads up that make sure he tight this bolts a little bit harder. There you go. Dot comes out. Dot away. Now I got this metal plate. I don't think I need to remove the plate to remove the extractor pin. The plate should be safe. So I'm gonna keep it for now. It looks like they are T10 Torx as well, but I'll leave the plate for now. I'm just going to, yeah, as long as I can remove the extractor, it should be fine. So I'm going to remove the firing pin. So got my plastic punch again. Use the thinner side of it. Just push the firing pin in and then slide the plate out a little bit. There you go. Firing pin plate comes out. Put it aside. Firing pin comes out. The spring not always. He's using. He's an OEM firing pin. The spring not always comes off with the firing pin, so you might need either. There you go. Little hit or a pick to pull that out. So that's the spring of the firing pin. It goes like so inside the firing pin channel in the slide. And get this off here. All right, we're gonna remove the extractor now. So I'm gonna use a block. So this is just like a piece of 2x4 that I made some holes, like in specific positions for different types of guns, and I put the slide in a certain position here that there's a hole aligned directly to where my extractor pin is gonna come out from. So I'm gonna do that. Got my 1/16 punch. See if that's enough. Looks like. Got my hammer. And what I want to do is, you can see that it starts moving the pin out of the way here. Right? What I want to do is you hold the extractor. The extractor is this piece right here. Hold the thumb with your thumb. If you're a righty, hold with the left hand thumb and keep punching it. Once the punch is already balanced by itself, you don't need to hold it anymore. Then just hold the extractor. Keep doing it until you feel the extractor is gonna snap in your finger. It's gonna have a pressure. Put pressure in your thumb. So now you can just pinch it, pull the pin out, pull the punch out, and then the extractor is gonna come out. Yeah, so the extractor is, dirty, not terribly dirty, but I don't think this is part of the problem that he was having. Looks like it's in good shape. Its integrity is fine. And then you get the extractor spring. Extractor spring, extractor's out, pin's still there. I'm gonna get that pin out completely. So get the punch in and just keep hammering till its pin is all out. So that's the extractor pin. And this is as much as I'm gonna disassemble on the slide. Like I mentioned, we would still need to take the bushing, the front side and bushing off. I'm not gonna do that. There's no need for me to do this. To do like a good clean, a factory, what I call a factory clean, make this like be, you know, clean as it was when it was new. I don't really need to remove these things. So there's no reason to put wearing on that pin in the bushing, but just do what I want to do. So let's go to the frame now. I'm here with the frame, and what I'm going to do is first I'm going to remove the grip panels, take this magwell off, and take the mainspring off. So it's relief, kind of takes the tension out of the way on this whole area, right? We have the ejector or the sear cage, and everything is under tension now by the mainspring. So I'm going to take that mainspring off. To do that, I need to go with my, in this case, the T10. Again, in an OEM, it would be a T20 Torx to remove the grip panels. There you go, one panel's off. The other panel is off. Then the magwell. This is the OEM magwell. So that's I think it's a 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench that goes here and relieve kind of a, get this little Allen wrench, Allen bolt here, Allen set screw rather. Get this off, and then this is supposed to slide out. Get the magwell out. Right, now we got access to the mainspring. There's a mainspring and something that's called the mag brake. This blade that is behind here, protecting the mainspring from the magazine when it goes in. So I'm going to remove that. Remove the blade first. Get my 1/16 punch. Push it. You don't need to hammer. No need to strike it. It's just really pushing normally. So pull it out. The blade comes off. That's the mag brake. Get that out of the way. Now I can take the mainspring off. So all I have to do is, this is the spring cup, kind of a, or a spring base, what holds the spring in place, and it's fixed in place by a counter pin. Goes this way. That's the pin is actually almost coming off to this side already. So what I'm gonna do is just use the thumb here, press this, keep pressing that base to take the pressure, take the tension off of the pin, and then push the pin with a punch. That's it. That's the pin. And then we take the mainspring off and the spring cup. Both parts are off. All right, now next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the safety, and with the safety, we're going to be able to release the sear cage. So to remove the safety, what I need to do here is, oh, I failed to mention this. There you go. I knew I was forgetting one tool. Small, tiny flat screwdriver comes very handy to raise the. You have to raise this sear spring leg here that keeps the safety that is perpendicular to the frame into place. So I have to raise that while you push the safety to the left. So nothing new here. So I'm going to raise that sear spring. There you go. I raised it and I moved to the side so it stays off the safety rod. And now I'm going to use that plastic punch to just push it. Give it a little push. There we go. And now my safety is going to come off. All right, so safety comes off from the left side. The ejector will come out. You have to take this ejector very carefully. So different than the Shadow and the other double action guns. These single actions, these tactical series, tactical sports series, their cage have these two little tiny springs. I don't know if you can see here. It's one on each side here, one there. They're really, really small springs. I'll take one off just to give you a sense of how small these things are. This is how small this is. I don't know if you can see it right there. To give you a reference, well, I'll put the sear cage right next to it. So you see how the sear cage is and how tiny the small spring is. If this spring falls while removing your sear cage, good luck finding it. All right, got that off. I'll put it aside. Now the next thing I'm gonna do after I take the safety, I'm gonna take the detents. So detent on the right side first. This is the safety detent that is on the right side behind the safety here that holds the safety on the right side in place. Now the safety on the right side is free to go. It comes off. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the left side. This one has a spring, so you gotta be a little bit careful. Grab by this. I would like to grab like this way on it. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. Maybe if I put this way, I grab like that and pull it this way. So it goes against the, I'm not compressing the spring when I'm trying to remove it. So it comes out fairly easily. Also very small part, very small spring. This spring actually comes apart. They become two parts, so you have to be very careful not to lose this. Same thing, if this falls, it's a little bit of a challenge to find. And then last thing I'm gonna do here is remove, there's a counter pin to the hammer pin. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to use that small flat screwdriver again. I'm talking about this pin right here. I'm going to push it up. See if I can do it here on camera. There we go. I'll push it up a bit and then finish it with well, here you go, another tool that I failed to mention. These tools are not, they're not required. It just makes your life much easier. So if I push this with a pick here, the pin comes off. So again, tiny pin, be careful not to lose this. There. Now that this comes off, it's cakewalk. Just push the side. There's a perpendicular pin here that holds the hammer in place. So I'm going to move that out of the way. Always to the left side of the gun. This pin only comes off the left side of the gun. As you can see, it has one side larger than the other. So if you try to push this to the right, it won't go out because the hole on the frame is actually smaller than this side of the pin. So, and then your hammer comes off. Hammer stud. I would not separate, for this job, I would not separate the hammer from the hammer stud. I would just clean this up. But if you want to finish the job here, oh, you notice like it doesn't have a disconnector, right? So that's just a hammer strut. Yeah, because it's a single action only gun. So no need for a disconnector. If you want to separate this, it's just like there's one pin. You just knock this pin out and then you separate this hammer strut from the hammer. Now I'm gonna do remove the trigger. So I'll move this out of the way here for now. Got my block again. If this is the first time you're doing this, you're probably gonna need a start punch. Like something like this is gonna help because the original pin on this would be a roll pin. It's a staked roll pin, so it's staked on both sides and it won't really want to come out. You're gonna need to use a start pin and heat kind of a fairly hard with good power to move this pin, to drive this pin out. But this is already an aftermarket pin, so use one of those floating pins, so it's really easy to remove. I'm looking for where's my T10? Oh, right here. Okay, just organizing my tools here real quick. So I'm gonna use my 164 pin punch. Get there. Another thing you're gonna notice is I'm not really worried about the trigger return spring, right? On a double action gun, on a Shadow, on an SPO1, I would use one of those forceps, or how they call this? Hemistad, I think. These little tweezers that you can clip it, right? I would use this to catch that spring to make sure it doesn't fly away when I remove the pin. But that's because of the way the design of that spring is. On a single action guns, the spring, it's not gonna go anywhere. It is actually fixed to the trigger and the trigger bar in a way that everything comes off as a one assembly, sorry. So you don't really need to be concerned about that. You can just hammer this out. I'll put this in position here. This doesn't want to come out for some reason. Oh, I know why. This is normally the way. So because on the single action guns, this floating pin, because of what I just explained about the the trigger return spring. The trigger return spring really does nothing to this floating pin. So the floating pin design works perfectly when the trigger return spring is around it and keep pressure on it so it doesn't move. It's not the trigger return spring in these guns, in these single action guns, they're not really doing that. So there's nothing really holding this pin in place. So what we do is we put some red Loctite on the pin. So that's why it's kind of the pin doesn't want to come out. I need to just start punching anyway just to break that Loctite. You know, there's nothing holding it, so I can just break it with a good start punch and a little bit of harder hit here. There you go. This comes off. You see nothing flew away from the gun. And this is your floating pin for the trigger. Now, trigger bar comes off, should come out a little bit. There you go. So interesting. If you're used to a double action trigger bar, right? On shadows, they are like a full bowl, both sides. This is just half. There's only one side, just the side that interacts with the sear, because that's all this trigger does. It does interact with the sear. It doesn't push the hammer back or anything like a double action trigger would do. So it's quite simple. There's a little bump here that rides on the slide, right? On this area of the slide here. So it prevents you to be able to fire while the gun is out of battery. So when the gun is in battery, this little bump catches into this area here, the slide, and then the trigger is reset. Before it is that, the slide is pushing this down and preventing the trigger to reset. So just a note about how the single action trigger works. I might want to remove I'm going to remove the mag release as well. So that's when I'm going to need that flat screwdriver. I'm going to remove this flat screw here. Let's see, yeah, you can see there. Flat screw right here. Go ahead and remove this guy. And then the spring. There we go. Again, no Loctite, nothing. Great. You don't really want to put a lot of Loctite, in this screw. This comes off. Grab my tweezer, pull the screw off. There you go. Actually there's a fair amount of Loctite. It was just not tight enough, so that's good. This comes off. I'm gonna clean this bolt as well. And then you pull the spring off. There you go. I just published the video, just posted the video on how to adjust the tension on this. So you have a lighter pull, a lighter push on a lighter magazine release button. So the magazine release button comes off. I do not need, like I mentioned, to remove the button here, but if you want, it's a T10 torque screw and just remove it out. That's all I'm gonna do. I won't need to remove the thumb rest. I'm gonna leave it in place. This Picatinny rail here, I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm just gonna clean the gun out and come back to disassemble. Reassemble it. Okay, I got everything cleaned, and now it's time to put everything together again. So this is gonna be the reassembly part of the video. So first, we're gonna get the trigger bar and trigger, put it together with the trigger return spring. This is what a trigger return spring looks like on a single action CZ gun. So what I want to do here, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to explain this well in the video, but there is a little orifice, little hole here, really small on your trigger shoe. That's where you're gonna be one of the legs of one of the sides here of your trigger return spring is gonna go into that hole, and that's what is gonna keep it in place. So I'm gonna go there, and you have to do in a way that the other side, the other leg, gets to the side where it's gonna actually fit in this little step here. So this little step here in the trigger bar, this little step's gonna hold the second leg of the spring. So first one goes there. Got this here real quick on the camera. First one goes into the hole. See, it stays in place. Now your trigger bar goes in, and let me get the trigger pin as well. There you go. The trigger shoe pin, not the trigger bar pin. It goes Oops, trying to put it upside down, that's going to be difficult. So you slide in you're going to slide that in this gap. Slide the trigger bar in this gap between the trigger turn spring and the trigger shoe, in a way that that step that I mentioned and I showed you, it's going to catch to the spring and compress it down. So when you pass the trigger pin, it keeps everything kind of a little bit of a tension in it. Like so. See, like I'm gonna put the trigger pin's not all the way through yet, but as you can see here, but that's the idea, is to keep it like you see here. All right, so I'm gonna get this done. Maybe a little bit of a punch here, make sure it goes through. One important detail is once the pin is in, it needs to be flush with the trigger shoe. You need nothing grabs on each side here, otherwise the trigger shoe is not going to go through the frame slot that it has for it. So you see there's tension here. I press it down, the trigger return spring push it back. Right, so that's how it's supposed to be. So okay, now that we have this put together again, we're gonna actually, before we put the trigger bar and trigger shoe in, we need to put the magazine release button back in place. So let me get the spring. That's the spring, that's the magazine release button. So interesting enough, I did create a tool actually. This is just a nose plier, and what I did is I file a couple kind of rails here, or just a notch in each side of it, so it grabs to the spring without sliding, because it's a little bit of a nightmare when you don't have anything like this. So this kind of grabs in the spring pretty well, and it squeezes it without letting it slip or fly anywhere. So you want to squeeze it up, go on top of it, and this is going to go into this slot. Now with the gun super clean again, you can see it. Put this way, maybe it's going to be better for you to see. See that slot there, right here in its side? This is where you need to kind of pinch that spring and go into that slot. Then you hold with the thumb through the to the magwell here, and then go with the flat screw on top to fix it in place. So that's the theory. Let's get it done. Just squeezing here. Actually, before we do that, we need to put the magazine release button in place, because these two notches here is where the two legs of the spring are going to rest on. So this goes back in, make sure it's moving freely. It is, great. Now we're going to go squeeze this up. Let's skate. All right, once it's in, you need to push it down and make sure, I don't want to take my thumb off here because this can come off, can fly out of the slot here. I want to make sure it fits those two notches in the magazine release button. So you might need to use a little bit of a pick or a small screwdriver to kind of force it into the slot. All right, it's in. So once it's in, it stays kind of a safe in place there. Now we just need to put that flat screwdriver on top to fix it in place. Flat screwdriver. Whoops. Got my jig here. My stand. Where's my plier? Or my tweezer? The tweezer, just to put the, I won't put any Loctite on it because there's still a fair amount of Loctite on that bolt, and you don't want to seize this bolt there, or it's really hard to remove it. So let's put it in a single action gun. In double action gun, I'm talking about this bolt here, as you can see. right there. In a double action gun, this screw holds both the magazine release spring and the trigger bar spring. On the on a double action gun, on a single action gun, like this one, the trigger return spring acts as both the trigger bar spring and the trigger return spring. So you don't need to, this screw here is really just holding your magazine catch spring, magazine button spring, rather. So you don't need to make it super tight. Looks like it's working. I'm gonna get a magazine to test this. And okay, get a magazine here to test. So in, comes off. All right, it's working just fine, perfect. Moving on to the next step. All right, next I'm gonna get the trigger bar and the trigger shoe together and put it there in place. So it just goes like kind of a really intuitive. There's only one way this thing is gonna go in, and it's the right way. So once it's in place, you need to make sure there is a kind of a slot in the frame where this goes in. You need to make sure it fits in that slot. It's perfectly there, and then you just align, as you holding with your index finger in the right hand the bar against the frame here on this side, you use your other hand to align the hole of the trigger shoe with the hole in the frame, so you can make the trigger pin go through. So I'm gonna hold this up. You can use a punch to make sure it is going through. Make sure it's fine. The same 564 punch should work. There we go. Now it's aligned. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna line to the other side. There we go. I'm gonna bring the get the floating pin. So here's the trick. I'm not gonna lubricate. Normally we lubricate this to go easy on, but I'm not gonna lubricate this one because I need to use actually a little bit of red Loctite on it. I mentioned this before. Single action gun CZs, that the trigger return spring design is not gonna hold this in place. You need something else to do it. So either you have a way to stick the original roll pin on it, or you just use the floating pin, but you need to put some Loctite on it. So I already cleaned the hole here, so what I need to do is actually get the kits in place. Got it in. Now, here comes the red Loctite. So I'm gonna get a little bit of red Loctite on it. Put in one side. It's just a tiny bit, really. Not be careful not to be excessive on this. In this case here, less is more. Just push it in. And I'm gonna push it all the way to the other side and do a little bit on the other side too. So I'm gonna get my punch again. Push a little bit to the other side. Just like so. Just by this much. Put a little bit of Loctite on this side as well. And then push it in. Take the excess of Loctite from the side. Make sure the trigger is moving freely. Yep, it's just fine, perfect. And now the trigger is in. We're gonna go for the sear cage now. All right, so I mentioned the sear cage, but actually before the sear cage, we need to put the hammer. So got the hammer clean. Hammer goes in place. Make sure it's everything aligned. Get our hammer pin from the left side of the gun to the right. That's the only way you can do it. You're not going to be able to do the other way. Don't force it. If you're trying to put the hammer pin through the wrong side, it will never going to work. left to right. There we go. Now there is a counter pin, really tiny pin that goes to secure it in place. I like to use that to do that with a little tweezer and a small flat screwdriver. Because it's on camera, it's much more difficult as usual. So the little tiny pin I just put is this one here. It goes across, and this keeps the hammer safely in place. Now we need to put the safety detents. So I'm gonna go with the left side first. You can do either way, doesn't really matter. They can go in any order. My eyes just caught the left side first here. So I like to grab it by the tip of the tweezer here, put it in place, grab a thin screwdriver, lock it there. So after I do that, the spring is where it needs to be. I just need to push a little bit with the tweezer, and this is gonna make it in place. There it is. It is there. I'm talking about this here. Now the second detent needs to go with the safety lever as well. So good opportunity to lubricate this as well. A little bit of lubrication here. That's a good idea. Just a little bit, not really much. I know somebody in the comments is gonna say, "Oh, you don't really need to lubricate that," but you know, maybe not. I like to do it. It does not hurt to have a little bit of oil there. The detent goes in after the safety lever is in place, and that keeps the safety lever secure in place. Last thing now is the sear cage. Aligned like so, and then the other side of the safety goes in. So I'm gonna raise the sear spring. There we go. Put a little drop of oil there and a safety rod. Everything is very dry right now, so I used the ultrasonic cleaner, and with some degreaser in it on the liquid, so it's everything really dry. So a little bit of oil here is really a good idea. So it goes in. It's not going to go all the way because you need to now push that safety plunger, safety detent on the left side. You need to push it back so you can press the safety in place. Make sure the sear leg is holding it. You're not supposed to activate the safety with the hammer down. Great. Hammer's cocked, safety is activated, does not fire, everything is working fine. Perfect. Now, next thing I'm gonna do is the mainspring and the mainspring cup. So these areas, like, it definitely does not need lubrication. However, it's prone to rust. I've seen this rusting on several guns. So I like to put a little bit of oil here just to make sure you protect from rusting. Again, there's no friction in this area, so it shouldn't need to lubricate, but since I know it's prone to rust, I'm gonna do a little touch of oil in it. Now just put it back here in place, push it in, and get the pin. As you're pushing it in, pin goes back in place. There we go. I'm gonna test if this hammer is cocking fine. It's firing. Looks good. Safety is working fine. Everything is great. So we're gonna put the mag brake back. Right, so getting the mag brake in place. Thinner part of the mag brake goes into this slot that you see right here. Right next to the pin, there's a slot. And the other side goes up. That's where the pin goes through to keep it in place. So we insert in the slot, center it in the magwell, covering the mainspring. Make sure it's centered. And then make sure that you have a good clearance, that it's aligned. Perfect. Put pin on, and you get the pin. Yeah. Oops. Too much. That pointer. All right. And the mag brake is in place. Perfect. Now we're going to put the grip panels. So I already put a little bit of Loctite in this grip bolts. All right, that looks good. Grip panel on the other side. The side's not aligned. All right, there we go. All right, and now the magwell. So he had this little bit of grip tape that was on top of the magwell here to make sure that it blends well, the magwell with the frame. So it looks like it's a good position here. It's blending well. And I'm gonna tighten that set screw that keeps the magwell in place. This feels a little bit too loose, so I'm gonna put a little bit of blue Loctite here. Definitely not red, just a little bit of blue Loctite. Yeah, this is feeling way too loose, so a little bit of Loctite on it. Blue Loctite, there it is. And excessive Loctite here. All right, and see if it's still blended well. Good. And I can tighten it a little bit more. You need to tighten this one a little bit with a little bit more torque than usual, because this set screw really tends to walk out, and then your magwell gets loose. So we're good to go with the frame, complete assemble. We're gonna go back to the slide. All right, we got the slide here, all clean, perfect. I'm gonna go first put the firing pin back. So firing pin is being cleaned out. Firing pin spring, and this goes in the hole, and this goes here on top of it. So the way I like to do, so this is the firing pin plate, needs to go on top under, like, you need to press the firing pin. So I got that plastic punch that I mentioned. I'm just make sure the video is gonna cut. It's gonna catch this. Little pressure here, the firing pin and the firing pin plate's gonna slide at the same time. So just press it down a little bit. Oops. Don't let it slip like it did before. And then this goes in, and bang, it's in place. Firing pin is perfect. Make sure the firing pin is working. These guns don't have a firing pin block, so all I have to do is push the firing pin in the back and should protrude to the hole. I'm not seeing it. Let me make sure I'm pressing this enough. Yeah, there it is. Perfect. It's working. Now the second thing is the extractor, so I'm going to use the block. All right. For the extractor, got the extractor spring properly cleaned, and the extractor also properly cleaned, just like new. With the spring, we need the pin too, so I'm find my pin here. Is the extractor pin. So 3 parts: spring, extractor, and pin. Spring goes first, extractor comes next, sliding through it. Then you need to use a thumb, right thumb, push the extractor back against this, push the extractor back to be on top of the spring. Then your left thumb push the extractor against the spring, and it should keep it in place for you to put a punch through it. A 664, 564 punch or 116 should work. So push back, put it in, go in the hole, and off you go. Perfect. It is, the extractor is there how it's supposed to be. Now turn it upside down. Pull the pin, pull the punch to it's like at the edge, or flush with the slide here. Perfect. And I want the pin. I'm gonna put a little bit of lubrication here, a little bit of oil. Just make my life easier when it goes in. Make sure it's in place. Grab my hammer. This is supposed to go in and replace the pin, replace the punch. So the punch goes out, pin is in. Now we just need to finish driving it to be flush with the slide. Very important, make sure it is flush. This would prevent your gun to operate. If this is like, this pin is out like this one is here, your slide's gonna hit the frame before, when the gun tries to cycle, this is gonna hit the frame and prevent the gun to cycle. So make sure it is all the way in. And this pin normally doesn't walk out. I haven't seen one that would be walking out. So that's perfect. I'm gonna test the extractor for functionality real quick. All I have to do is get that plastic punch pin and push against the extractor. It should move. There you go, it's moving. The spring is pushing it back in place. Perfect. Now, last thing we're gonna do here is put that sleeve, some lubrication, and make sure I lubricate this right. So this is going to be a good opportunity to give you guys a hint on, or some insights on how I lubricate these guns. So you haven't seen me put basically much oil here anywhere. A little bit in the sear cage, a little bit in the safety here. I'm going to put one, and it's really a drop, really not much. You don't want anything running oil here anywhere. So in the trigger bar, right here, where I have that bump, right between that and the frame, I'm going to put a drop of oil there, a drop of oil on top of it, because that rides in the slide. And that's kind of all I need in terms of oil in that area. Nowhere else, there's no friction anywhere else. Maybe a little bit in the back here where it touched the sear, and you're good to go. Press the trigger a few times for that oil to spread. Now in the frame, on the rails where the slides are gonna be, you know, connected with, I'm gonna be more generous on the amount of oil I'm gonna put there. That's fine, because the rails, all the excessive oil is gonna come through either the front of the gun or the back of the gun. So I'm gonna get the slide without the barrel or anything and just slide a few times back and forth. This is actually very tight. Get it lubricated. And then we're going to lubricate the barrel. See these marks in the barrel? You have friction here. That's the only place that you need to lubricate the barrel. Right there. There's some marks here too. Whenever you have marks, this is where the barrel is actually touching the slide. Here and the top of the chamber, it's a good area to put it. On the locking lugs. The bottom here. That is where it goes in contact with these two spaces here, two elevations here in the slide. And then it goes in. Oh, forgot. The sleeve goes after. That plastic sleeve goes actually after the barrel. Forgot that. This goes in, then the sleeve. And last is our guiding rod and recoil spring. Perfect. Now, a little bit too much oil here, so it's coming out from the back of the gun already and running everywhere. So I may have put too much on the rails here. Got my slide lock back there. Outline the marks. Make sure the trigger is working. Yep, it's resetting just fine. I'm gonna put the Now I'm gonna put his optic back and we're good to go. Thank you for watching.